We are GreenMan Theater Storytellers, and we are here to tell you a collection of African folk tales. This storytelling was originally commissioned by a local public library. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we were not able to perform this at the library, and so instead we decided to record it and put it up online. In this collection of stories, you will hear many animal tales. Some of them are about the trickster, the hare. Others are about the trickster, Anansi the spider. Anansi the spider is an unusual character in that he can be both spider and man, and has the characteristics of both. If you find that you enjoy this program, we would encourage you to make a donation. You should see a donation button. And now, please enjoy our evening of African folktales.
I'm going to be telling an African folktale today. The name of it is The Jackal and the Hen. And this story originates from a small African country called Lesotho. And Lesotho is located at the very southern tip of Africa. And the unusual thing about Lesotho is here's South Africa, and Lesotho is right in the middle of that country. Also, I'm going to be referring to a substance called snuff that you probably never heard of. But back in the day, people would share snuff, kind of like a tobacco kind of a substance, and they sniff it. So I just wanted to make you aware. And this is a story that the old people tell. They say that pretty little hen flew to the top of the sack of wheat one day looking for food. And she could see far out over the fields, and in the distance she saw Jackal coming toward her, wearing, as usual, a very bright suit and a big old hat. And as he came closer to her, she didn't even look up. She just kept on hunting for food. "Good morning, mother of mine," Jackal greeted her. "Yes, I greet you," says Hen. "Are you still living?" "Yes, I am still living. And you? Are you living also?" "Yes, mother, I'm living. And did you wake well this morning?" "Yes, I woke well." And as Jackal was talking, he was looking closely at Hen, and he could see that she was young, and that her flesh would be tender, and that she would taste sweet. If only he could get to her. But there she was on the top of that darn sack of wheat, and he couldn't get close to her at all. So Jackal had to think of a story to get her down. Now, Jackal had many clever stories. He wasn't just clever. Oh, no. He was very clever. Very clever. He said, "Mother, have you heard about the new peace?" "What?" "Yes, it's no longer a possibility for one animal to catch another animal because of this peace. The chiefs all got together and they came up with this business of the peace." "Oh, you say there is peace now?" "Oh, yes, mother. The big peace. There has never been such a big peace, ever. So you see, now it's safe for you to come down from there because there's no danger anymore. Come on down, mother, and we can discuss the matter nicely. In fact, we can take snuff together. Come on down, mother. Just remember the peace." Well, Hen was not quite as dumb as Jackal thought she was. She had to make quite sure first that he just wasn't making up some lies. He knew many clever stories, and most of the time these stories were nothing but lies. So she turned around and she looked out over those fields, and then she went to the very, very top of that stack of wheat, and she just kept staring. And finally Jackal said, "Mother, what is it that you stare so up there?" And she said, "What do I see? What does it matter what I see? Who cares what I see? For there's no longer any danger for any of the animals on earth. Oh, it looks like it's a pack of dogs coming toward us." "Dogs? Did you say dogs? Oh, Mother, I'm gonna have to take my leave. I'm a man who's very busy, and I've got much work waiting for me." "Leave? Why do you want to leave, Grandfather? There's no longer any danger for any animal on earth. Have you forgotten it, Grandfather?" I don't think these particular dogs were at that meeting." And with that, Jackal took off, and a big cloud of dust rose behind him from the road. Laughed Hen, for now she knew that that entire story about the peace was nothing but a bunch of lies. And if she had taken snuff with that fellow, he would have caught her. Said Hen, "I have told a story to the storyteller, and I have caught him beautifully." And that is the end of the story.
This story is from Kenya. It's one of those sorts of stories that try to explain a little bit about the world around you. It is called The Lion, the Hare, and the Hyena. Once there was a lion named Simba. No, not that Simba. This Simba lived by himself in a cave. He liked living by himself. He thought that was the best thing in the world because he was responsible for nobody and nobody was responsible for him. He liked his independence. But just before this story begins, he found out living by yourself is not always the best thing. Because right before this story begins, he injured his leg very badly to the point where he could not hunt. And if his friend Sunguru the hare had not hopped by the cave and seen him, things would have gone very badly for him. But Sunguru did see Simba the lion with his badly injured leg and immediately went to help him, brought him food, brought him water, treated his leg, and soon Simba was able to hunt small animals by himself again. And since he was only able to hunt small animals, he brought them back to the cave, and outside the cave, a pile of marrow bones began to grow. Now, Nangao, the hyena, was strolling by one day shortly after, and he smelled something delicious. He looked and he saw that big pile of marrow bones outside of Simba's cave, and he crept closer. It smelled so good. But Nangao was a coward, like all hyenas, and he saw that the pile of marrow bones could be easily seen from inside the cave. And he did not want Simba to see him stealing his marrow bones. So he crept closer to the cave and said, "Oh, Simba, Simba, are you quite well? Nobody in the jungle has seen you for some time. Is everything all right with you?" But Simba said, You are no friend of mine. If you had been a friend, you would have come by to check on me much earlier. You would have been like my friend Sunguru the hare, who has been looking after me, tending my injured leg, bringing me food and water. All you want is that marrow bones to fill your stomach. Go away. And Sunguru the hare said, yes, yes, go away, we do not want you here. So there was nothing for it, but Nangao slunk back away into the jungle. But he could not stop thinking about that enormous pile of delicious marrow bones outside of Simba's cave. So a few days later, he crept back to Simba's cave and waited until he saw Sunguru the hare hopping back down to the river to fetch some water. And as soon as Sunguru was gone, Nangao said, "Oh, Simba, Simba, everyone in the jungle is talking. They say Sunguru is not treating you right. They say he's the best healer in the whole jungle, and yet your leg is not yet healed. He just wants to be your servant, a very plush position for a hare, you know. He's only using you." And just then, Sunguru came hopping back with the water and saw Nangao. Go away, we told you, go away, you are not wanted here." But Simba said, "Sunguru, Nyangao tells me you are a great healer, and yet my leg is not yet healed. He says you are prolonging my injury, not treating it right so that you can stay and be my companion. Is this so?" Now, Sunguru knew he was in a very difficult position. "Well," he said, "a little yes and a little no. You see, I am a very small animal, and some medicines are very large, and a very small animal cannot do very large medicines without help. So I've been doing the best I can, but I need a large medicine to fix your leg." And Simba said, "What medicine do you need?" And Sunguru looked right at Nyangao and said, "I need a strip of skin from the back of a full-grown hyena." And Nyangao said, "What?" But Simba pounced on Nyangao, held him down, ripped a long strip of hide right off of Nyangao's spine. And where he did this, all the hairs on Nyangao's back stood up straight and stiff and sharp. And from that day to this, a hyena's spine has long, straight hairs sticking straight up from it. And Nyangao ran howling off into the jungle. But Sunguru took that strip of skin and wrapped it around and around and around Simba's leg. And whether it was in fact the hyena skin, or whether it was just good care by Sunguru, whichever it was, Simba's leg grew strong and healthy again. And everyone in the jungle agreed that Sunguru was the best physician in the whole jungle. But Nangao? Well, Nangao didn't show his face again in public for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that is the story of the lion, the hare, and the hyena.
Shakanaka, the handsome young man. A Shona tale from Zimbabwe originally told to Hugh Tracy in the Karanaga tongue. Once upon a time there was a widow who had a handsome son. His name was Shakanaka Mugwe. He was a good and obedient son. And not only was he handsome, but a responsible member of his tribe. Now, the mother of Shakanaka did not ever want him to get married because she was afraid he would go away with his wife and leave her all alone. So when he grew up, his mother made him promise to never marry any girl who ate any food that she, his mother, had cooked. Now, being a good son, he agreed to this unkind request. Why was this unkind? Because the widow was a very good cook and everyone liked to eat her food. Now, it was not before long that the news of this attractive young man spread throughout the countryside, and young girls came from near and far to see for themselves the attractiveness of this young man. Young girls would come to the village, and when they arrived, the mother of Shakanaka would greet them. "Girls, you have come a long way. You must be hungry. Let me fix you some porridge." "Thank you, Mother," the girls would say, and they would eat the food there under the trees outside the village. And then the mother of Shakanaka would go and stand outside the hut of her son and say, "Shakanaka, my son, some girls have come to see you." "Mother, what have you cooked?" he would reply. "Porridge, my son Mugway. Did they eat any?" Yes, my son." "Then send them all away." And the mother of Shakanaka would send the girls away. Several groups of girls came to the village, and each time they would eat the food that his mother cooked, and each time mother of Shakanaka would tell him, and each time he would send the girls away. Now, a group of 10 girls had noticed that anyone who ate the food that the mother of Shakanaka ate didn't get to see him. So they made a plan. They would bring their own supply of food, hide it in the bush outside the village, and eat it together in secret. When these 10 girls arrived at the village, the mother of Shakanaka greeted them. "Girls, you have come a long way. You must be hungry. I will make you some porridge." "No, Mother, thank you. We are not hungry." "Oh, then you must be tired." And she showed them to a hut where they could spend the night because she was sure they would be hungry by morning. Well, during the night, the girls got up, went out into the bush where they had hidden their food, ate their meal in secret, and went back to the hut to sleep. Well, early the next morning, the mother of Shakanaka went to the hut. "Girls, you must be really hungry now. I have brought you some porridge." "No, thank you, Mother. We are not hungry." "Oh, dear me," thought the mother. "What shall I do? They do not want to eat my food." So she kept them sitting outside the village under the shade trees for another day. And that night, the girls stayed in the same hut. And as before, they got up, they went out to their supply of food, they ate in secret, and went back to the hut to sleep. Well, early the next morning, the mother of Shakanaka showed up. "Girls, I am sure you are hungry now. I have brought you porridge." "No, thank you, Mother. We are not hungry." Yo-wee, said the mother. "My son will marry one of these girls and no longer need me." So the mother of Shakanaka went and stood outside her son's hut. "Shakanaka, my son, some girls have come to see you." "Mother, what did you cook?" "Porridge, my son Mugway." "Did they eat any?" No, my son." "Then bid them come inside." "Oh, my son," cried the widow, "now I am finished. I must go to a hut far away in the bush, and there I will die." "Oh, Mother," said Shakanaka, "you do not have to go. We can live here as one family." But no matter how he begged and pleaded with his mother, she would not change her mind, for she knew that her tricks had failed, and she refused to share her son with a wife. So the mother of Shakanaka put all of her belongings in one basket, and she traveled far out into the bush. And in time, she died. Takanaka asked the girls to come into the village. And after an appropriate time of mourning had passed, invited the eldest to be his bride, as was right and proper, and they had many children and lived long and happy lives.
I'm going to tell you a story from Zimbabwe about the cat who came indoors. There are many stories that explain how dogs came to be domesticated, but this story explains how cat found the perfect creature to be her mate. Once upon a time, there was a cat, a wild cat who lived all by herself out in the bush, also known as the grassland. After a while, she got tired of living alone, so she took herself a husband, another wild cat who she thought was the finest creature in all the jungle. One day, as they strolled along the path through the tall grass, swish! Out of the grass jumped Leopard, and Cat's husband was bowled over, all fur and claws, into the dust. "Oh," said Cat, "I see my husband is covered in dust. How disgusting! He's not the finest creature in all the jungle. It is Leopard." So Cat went to live with Leopard. Now, Cat and Leopard lived together very happily until one day, as they were hunting in the bush, suddenly, whoosh! Out of the shadows leapt Lion right onto Leopard's back and ate him all up. Yum, 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 yum. "Oh," said Cat, "I see Leopard is not the finest creature in all the jungle. It is Lion." Cat went to live with Lion, and they lived very happily until one day, as they were stalking through the forest, a large shape loomed overhead, and splat! Elephant put one foot on top of Lion and squashed him flat. "Oh," said Cat, "I see Lion is not the finest creature in all the jungle. It is Elephant." So, Cat went to live with Elephant. She climbed up onto his back and said, purring on his neck, right between his big floppy ears. They lived together very happily until one day, as they were moving through the tall reeds down by the river, boom! There was a loud bang, and Elephant sank down, all the way down to the ground. Cat looked all around, and all she could see was a small man. And she thought, I see Elephant is not the finest creature in all the jungle. It is man. So, Cat walked after man all the way to his home and jumped up onto the thatch of his hut. "At last," said Cat, "I have found the finest creature in all the jungle." She lived up in the thatch of his hut very happily and began to catch the mice and the rats that lived there, until one day, as she sat up on the roof, warming herself in the sun, she heard noises from inside the hut. The voices of man and his wife grew louder and louder and louder until blah, 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 blah. Out came men tumbling heads over heels into the dust as woman follows and says to him, "And don't you come back," as she's dusting off her hands. "Aha!" said Cat. "Now I know who is truly the finest creature in all the jungle. It is woman." So Cat came down from the thatch, went inside the hut, and sat by the fire. And that is where she has been ever since. Thank you.
When The Guardian of the Pool was first written, people from Central Africa did not know very much about the science of snakes. They falsely believed that some serpents, like the mighty water python, could cure all illnesses and stop pain. The healing power of snakes was a common theme in African folklore, as told in this tale. In a land far away was a great lake, and in one corner of the lake was a small opening in which water rushed through. It gurgled and bubbled all the way down the plains as a rapid river until it was hemmed in by 3 huge rocks. The water swirled around and around with no place to go. It went faster and faster until it formed a whirlpool. At the bottom of the whirlpool lies a huge, mighty silver water python, coil upon shiny coil of him, his beady eyes blinking with the sunlight that streaks through, a forked tongue flickering, a terrible, beautiful water python, but not any ordinary python, for in the touch of his smooth, wet skin lies healing. Healing for all illness. Healing for all pain. Healing for anyone who is brave enough to swim down and visit him at the bottom of the pool. A young girl named Agosa sat at the edge of the water pool, and though the warm sun shone down on her brown skin, she trembled. "Oh, I don't know if I'm brave enough to go down and touch that python, but I have to, for Mother is ill and she will surely die if I don't. But I'm so afraid. Why, he's so strong he could wrap around and squeeze the life out of the largest cow in the village. Oh, I can't even imagine what he would do to me." As she was sitting there, she could hear a shrill screeching behind her, "Nagosa! Nagosa!" She saw her sister running down the hill. "Nagosa, hurry up! Mother, she's dying! Hurry!" Well, from the bottom of the pool, the mighty water python could hear her sisters yelling and looked up at Nagosa. Oh, she was beautiful. Nagosa looked down at the angry water and she was terrified. But then she thought of her mother. She remembered how her mother had sang her lullabies all night long when a crocodile almost drowned her, and how her mother had run for miles to find red radish root to ease her pain when a scorpion had bit her. And how her mother had frantically beaten off a hairy baboon that tried to steal her brother. And when there was drought and men were starving, how her mother took from her own maize porridge and gave it to her children. I must save Mother. Nagosa held her breath, closed her eyes, and dove in. And she swirled around and around in the cold, stinging water, and she began swimming down, 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 closer and closer to danger. Ooh, what if that python holds me down and drowns me? Ooh, or if he wraps around and squeezes me. She kept going, though. I have to do this for Mother. She swam until she reached the bottom. And then she saw him. His beady eyes were blinking, his forked tongue flickering, and she thrust out her arms and pushed her hands down to rub along his wet, smooth skin. And then she shot up, arms flailing, legs kicking, till she reached the surface of the whirlpool. And then she stepped out, ran across the fields into her hut, and lay those healing hands on her mother. She gently rubbed her mother's skin, and she saw color return to her cheeks, and a smile spread across her face. Nagosa knew her mother was healing. That night, a full moon rose above the mountains, and the mighty python began to uncoil and slowly surface to the top of the whirlpool. Out stepped a young man, a handsome man, with his head held high, dark tight curls, fearless brown eyes. He was strong. He looked around him, and he saw that the earth was still good. It had been so long since the water witch had cast a spell on him. He knew he must find and thank Nagosa for bringing him back. The young man strode across field after field until he came to a semicircle of huts. Nagosa! Nagosa! He called out the name her sister had earlier. Nagosa! Out of the huts stepped Nagosa. Nagosa, your courage has saved me. For when the water witch cast her snake spell, I sunk down to the bottom of that whirlpool. Forever by day, I must continue to guard it. But because of your courage, by night, I may assume my human form and reveal myself to all those who are beautiful and brave like you. Come. The young man pulled out a beautiful moon and earth necklace and slipped it around her neck. Now, Nagosa spends much of her day by the side of the whirlpool, singing sweet songs and playing on her ugaba for her beloved mighty python. And by night, she wears her moon and earth necklace and waits by the whirlpool for the son of the chief, her beloved husband, to arise from the water.
This is a Swahili story called A Woman for 100 Cattle. A man and a woman lived in the beautiful and fertile land of Pata in eastern Africa. They had one child, a boy, named Azizi, which means precious son. Their fortune consisted of 100 cattle, nothing else. No sheep, no goats, no crops. When Azizi was a young man, unfortunately, both of his parents died. He stayed in his house for the appropriate time of mourning, and when he came out, he looked around. He still had his fortune, his 100 cattle, but he was lonely. He wanted a wife. He urged his neighbors to find an appropriate woman. They were happy to help. They looked nearby and they looked far away. And they came to him and said, "There are several fine young women in this village who would be a good wife for you, but none of them are of marriageable age. You must wait a year, maybe 2. Noticing his crestfallen look, another neighbor stepped forward and said, "But there is a fine young woman in another village, 8 hours of traveling away. She is the only child of a rich man who has 6,000 cattle. Her name is Johari, which, as you know, means precious jewel." Azizi urged his neighbors to make it so. They said, "We are happy to help, but Johari's father desires that anyone who wants to marry his daughter should pay the bride price of 100 cattle." Oh, well, Azizi had 100 cattle, but if he paid them all as a bride price, then he lowered his head to meditate on it. And when he raised it, he had decided. And he went to gather up his 100 cattle to deliver to Johari's father. So Johari and Azizi were wed, and they spent several days with Johari's father feasting, as was the tradition. And when they returned to Azizi's home, he told Johari about his fortune and her bride price. "Formerly," he said, "I milked my cows for sustenance, but now I will ask my neighbors for milk. I'm sure they will help." So Azizi went to his neighbors, but instead of giving him milk, they gave him a job. Now, it was his job to milk their cows in order to eat. But in spite of their deprivation, Azizi and Johari fell in love and grew in devotion and adoration to each other. One day, when Azizi was milking his neighbor's cows, Johari went outside the front of their house to catch the morning breeze, and it just so happened that a scoundrel was passing by. Well, he was so caught with her grace and beauty that he was filled with a desire to seduce her. He approached her with a greasy smile. "Well, what brings a fine lady as yourself outside unaccompanied on such a day as this?" And then he leaned forward and whispered such things in Johari's ear that she had never heard before. Now, Johari was a fine young woman, and she had no idea how to respond, and so she stuttered and stammered, and then she just said, I'll give you an answer later, I need to think," and she hurried into her home. Well, not long after that, before Johari even had the courage to tell Azizi what had happened, her father came for an unexpected visit. She was so happy. She greeted him with joy and brought him into their home and made him comfortable. And then she went out the back door and began to cry piteous tears because she knew they had not the slightest bit of food to feed them. It just so happened at that time that unscrupulous scoundrel was lurking behind her backyard, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. And when he did, he called out, "You have not given me your answer yet. I cannot sleep. I cannot eat. I think only of you." Well, Johari lowered her eyes to hide her tears, but when she raised her head, she had decided. "I will not delay you any longer," she said, but first, I need a piece of meat to feed my guests. My father has come to visit." Not even put off by the fact that her guest was her father, That unscrupulous scoundrel said, "Yes, don't go away, I'll be right back." And he did return quickly, but not just with a piece of meat, but a whole quarter of beef. Johari took it without saying a word and began to cut it up to prepare to cook it. Now at this time, Azizi, who had been milking their neighbor's cows, returned home, but instead of finding Johari waiting for him, he found his father-in-law. Well, he greeted him warmly, but it was not with joy, for he thought, "Whatever shall we feed this fine, rich man?" He excused himself and went out the back door to find Johari, and he did find her cutting up that quarter of beef. "Wherever did you get that?" he said. And as much as it broke her heart, Johari did not tell him the truth. She explained how their neighbors were happy to help feed her father. So Azizi went back in the house to wait with his father-in-law for Johari to serve the meat. Well, while they were waiting, that unscrupulous scoundrel would not give up. He passed by the front of their house, first one way and then another, looking inside and getting closer every time until he stopped right in front of it and peered in. Well, Azizi, not knowing if he was a traveling merchant or perhaps a homeless beggar, invited him in. And since they were about to dine, tradition required he invite him to stay. So he did, not knowing that unscrupulous scoundrel's intent toward Johari. So, when Johari walked in with the platter of meat, imagine her surprise to find not just her husband and father, but 3 men waiting for her. It didn't take her long to realize what she must do. She laid the platter graciously in front of them and said, "Now eat, you 3 fools." Oh, nearly sputtering at her disrespect, her father stood up and said, "And wherefore am I a fool?" "Well, because, Father, you took an expensive item and sold it for a cheap one." "What have I sold too cheaply?" "Father, you have but 1 child, and yet you sold me for 100 cattle. You placed the value of 100 cattle higher than me." He didn't know what to say. "You're right, my child. I was a fool." And he sat down, nearly weeping with despair. And then her husband stood and said, "My darling wife, how have I been a fool?" "Oh, you, husband, you are even more of a fool. For you inherited 100 cattle, and yet you traded them all to marry me. As much as I love you, and as much as I love being your wife, you did not choose wisely. If you had waited just a year, you could have traded 50 of your cattle and still have 50 left. Then you would have something, but now you have nothing and nothing to eat." Azizi sat down without an argument because he knew she was right. And then that unscrupulous scoundrel stood up and boldly asks, "And how am I a fool?" Barely able to contain her contempt, she said, You are the greatest fool of all. You thought that you could get with a quarter of beef what had been bought with 100 cattle. Does that not make you the greatest fool?" The silence that followed was broken only by the gasps of Johari's father and her husband when they realized the intent of this unscrupulous scoundrel. They glanced at each other and looked at him and rose in unison, their fists clenched. Well, that scoundrel began to bow deferentially and wheedle excuses, but he was not so much a fool that he did not see what was about to happen. And so he turned quickly and ran out of the house and was never seen in that town again. You see, Johari's life had been vexed by her greedy father and her impatient husband and the untoward advances of that unscrupulous scoundrel. but she dealt with it by getting it all out in the open. When she showed her husband and her father how their behavior had brought them nearly to the brink of ruin, and then she exposed that unscrupulous scoundrel for what he really was and got him out of her life forever. So, Johari's father stayed and feasted with them for a few more days on that quarter of beef, and they enjoyed each other's company. And when he returned home, he gathered up the 100 cattle that Azizi had given him for his Johari and prepared to send them back. And with them, he sent 200 more cattle. And in that way, Azizi and Johari were able to live together comfortably for many years.
Thank you for watching our program of African folk tales. We hope you have enjoyed it. We are GreenMan Theater Storytellers, and we are part of the larger organization of GreenMan Theater. We are all looking forward to the day when we can meet you again in person at GreenMan Theater. We invite you to look at our website, which you'll find under GreenMan Theater, or to find us on GreenMan on our Facebook page. So please, enjoy our stories and make a donation if you feel so moved. Thank you.